Yes, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Drop, brought to you by TarTillustrated.com. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, joining me as he always does. Yeah, you guys know who he is. It's THI publisher Andrew Jones. And AJ, we're here to talk some future non-conference schedule-related stuff for football in this specific episode of the Daily Drop, kind of talking about some of Carolina's more notable future opponents over the next few years, including some home-and-home series with some pretty big programs. And kind of what makes sense building off of that, too, moving forward. Should Carolina play more of these lower teams? Should Carolina go and try to play some of these bigger teams like a TCU, who they have a home-and-home series with in 2025 and 2026? We'll dive into that a little bit later as well. But, AJ, I want to kick it to you right off the bat. Talk to me about some of Carolina's future non-conference opponents, because there are a few that pop out when you look over the next 5, 6, 7, even 8 years at some of the schedules. And there's some other teams that maybe don't excite people and fans as much as some others.
I think the way to answer this, the way to start it out would be you have to do so recognizing what makes the most sense. So if we judge this year's non-conference schedule versus the 24 one, which are very different, what makes most sense for a program like North Carolina, where it wants to go, not where it was when Mac took over, but where it wants to go. And also the direction the schedule was heading when Larry Fedora was coach. For example, we don't see the home and home with Liberty on there anymore because that's what Larry wanted. I covered a game they played at Old Dominion in 2018, I guess it was. It was 17. It was awful. It was 2017. It was before Old Dominion renovated their stadium, so I got to give them that. But it was a brutal setup. The field was awful. Carolina had 5 knee injuries in that game. I think they lost 4 guys for the season. The facilities just weren't worthy, and they were heading in a direction of playing games like that. They did one last year at Georgia State. Never should have played that game.
No.
North Carolina football should never be in that environment. No ACC team should play there. And I don't mean to be critical of Georgia State, but they've got I know that they now own what was once Turner Field, but schools like that have to do a better job with the facilities, especially if they want to get big boys to go in there. I just don't think there's anything to gain by playing those games. And that's one of the issues that some of us in the media have talked about regarding the ACC, is that too many ACC teams, they'll go to Western Michigan. You know, Pittsburgh will go there. BC will go to Akron. Why? Like Virginia Tech played at Akron several years ago. Why do you do that? Why do you subject yourself to that?
Yeah.
Just take another home date, get the gate. And if those teams don't come in, they don't come in. But they'll say, well, if you want to get Akron in twice, you got to play them once on the road. No, you don't. They're Akron.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that.
No.
Yeah, I remember NC State had the infamous Akron game when Chuck Amato put foot in mouth afterwards saying, well, they take partial qualifiers. We don't. And they lost that game, and that was the beginning of the end for Chuck. But State didn't go to Akron. They didn't have to go to Akron. So with respect to Carolina, I like this year's schedule with one exception. I like playing South Carolina. Well, 2 exceptions. UNC and South Carolina should never, ever play again in Charlotte.
And I hate it, man.
They started the 15 season there, and there were a ton of empty seats. They started Mac's first game, part 2 was there. There were a ton of empty seats. And I hear that ticket sales are not going that great for this one.
Just play at home.
Play on campus.
Play home and home. I don't get it.
Play home and home.
I'm glad you said that. I don't get it.
It's just some neutral site games work. You can build them up. Anytime a game's in Atlanta, it works because Atlanta's good for stuff like that. FSU's going to play LSU in Orlando this year to start the season. But that's also those 2 programs. They're going to fill it up. South Carolina, North Carolina proven they're not going to fill up Bank of America Stadium when they face each other, which to me is mind-boggling, especially for a South Carolina fan base that likes to think that they're like Alabama or something like that. North Carolina at least doesn't think that way. So you would think there'd be 40,000 South Carolina fans there and 25,000 North Carolina fans there, and the place is almost full, but that's not the case. So I like the second game App State, although I don't think they should play in-state schools. But as far as the quality of the opponent, that's a really good opponent to have in there. I love the idea of Minnesota coming in.
Yeah, switch it up a little bit.
And they go to Minnesota next year. I love home and homes with Power Fives. I think there should always be a home and home with a Power 5 team in there. I do not like the idea of Campbell coming in there. If you have something that you want to do on a Sunday afternoon, take a little drive, go to Boys Creek and drive by the football stadium. And this is no disrespect to Campbell whatsoever. Campbell has done a great job building that program. And they actually have very, very nice facilities. I like the stadium there a lot, but but a team that plays in that stadium should never play a Power 5.
Yeah.
And I'm not and it's not Campbell specifically, it's any FCS. I just don't think Power 5 teams should play FCS schools. I don't. I know that Larry Fedora, when it came up, he used to, well, they need their money too. But why is it a P5 school's job to fund an FCS school?
Yeah, I've never really understood that.
It doesn't make sense. I don't think there's any value in a game like that. They're going to charge regular Carolina football ticket prices on November 4th for an FCS team to come in. I don't think you get anything out of it at all. I think it's a waste of time. So I think the ACC should mandate eliminating FCS games, and that would be something that would help the TV package a little bit. If they want to do little things to force the ESPN to renegotiate a TV deal, eliminate those games right out of the gate. Maybe mandate everybody plays a Power 5 non-conference game or 2. Everybody plays the Sun Belt. I think the teams, the quality of the Mountain West or the AAC, if you have a Power 5 and you have like a Wyoming or someone like that, I'm just talking about quality, and then you have Tulsa or somebody from the AAC, and then you have a lower end
a Memphis or something like that.
Yeah. Sun Belt, whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Memphis from the AAC. That's a doable schedule if your league's really good, but the ACC is not really good right now. So I like Carolina playing 2 Power 5s outside the league this year. I think they should every year. Mm-hmm. Until they're in a different conference, which may never happen, that crap reporting, not the people who are in Amelia Island, but the fringe followers out there who aren't real media, the narrative they were pushing last week was so false. So as long as the ACC is what it is, and it's not much better, I think Carolina should always play 2 P5s. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of hard to do that when schedules are done so far in advance, and you've got to schedule in wins, because Mac will tell you, coach has got to get wins. So there's a lot of places we could go with this. I like this year's for the most part. Next year they go to Minnesota. I love that.
That'll be interesting.
But then they got Charlotte, Central, and JMU. I know JMU's a good program, but what are you going to get from that?
Yeah.
Charlotte, again, I'm not a big fan of playing the in-state. They go to Charlotte in 25. Mm-hmm. Central, I get it. I think if you're going to play an FCS school, play Central and A&T, play locally. Help those schools. If you're going to help an FCS school, help one of them. Mm-hmm. But I don't really like the idea of playing the FCS teams, though. I just don't. No. And add another Power 5 next year. Swap one of those guys out and play Ole Miss. I would love to see Carolina play Ole Miss.
Yeah, I'd love to see them play. I mean, there's just so many.
Arkansas.
How many conferences? Yeah, there's good schools out there. Like even throwing out of Memphis. I know it's a random team, but it's not that far. It's a decent program. It's a lot more exciting, I think, from a fan's perspective of playing Campbell. Because I mean, no disrespect to Campbell, no disrespect to any of these smaller FCS schools. They're nothing games, AJ. I mean, I countless times I'll look, on a Saturday in the fall. Oh, I wonder who Duke's playing today. Or I wonder who Virginia's playing today. Oh, they're playing Richmond. Well, I'm not watching that game. I mean, it's just like it's a nothing game, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the programs. And upsets do happen every once in a while, and it's a cool storyline for 5 minutes, but play actual teams that are at your level. I think that's important because AJ, it's not like basketball where you play 30 games a year. You know what I mean? It's football. You play 12 games. Make them all count. I mean, I don't see the appeal of watching Campbell and Kenan Stadium from a fan's perspective. I don't think people really care, and go look at how many people will be there on that day. I mean, especially it's just not the same.
If there's the hint of inclement weather.
Oh, yeah. And I don't blame people. It's the package and the product is not as exciting, especially if you're paying the same price for it. You know what I mean?
Well, let's look at it this way. Since I've been covering Carolina, we can go further back than that too if you want, but we can go back to the beginning of the MAC era. And I started covering in November 96 when I started in this business. So, and I haven't just covered Carolina, but Carolina's had a better non-conference schedule than any other schools around here for the most part. So, but they have the home and homes they played with the Pac-12. They've had Stanford. They had them in the 90s, 97 and 98. They had Cal here not too long ago.
Yep.
And the game at Cal was cool. Cheapskate Hill is remarkably funny. It's a great storyline. In Arizona State, they had them in the early 2000s. I covered an overtime loss at home to Arizona State, and I covered the game that they won at Arizona State when John Bunting was just downright giddy.
Rutgers as well, right? They had a home and home.
Well, yeah, I'm talking, but those are Pac-12.
You're talking about strictly Pac-12.
Big 12, they had a home and home when Mac was at Texas. In fact, I'll never forget the boo when Mac in Texas ran out of the tunnel at Kenan Stadium, and I think it was 0-3, and Texas waxed the Tar Heels.
Oh, yeah.
And they had a game at Oklahoma, which was an additional game. It was the Hispanic College Football Fund, I think. It was Bunting's first game. They took that one, and then the next week they were at Texas, or next week they were at Maryland and Texas. That was crazy. They played 3 top 10 teams to start the season that year on the road. Otherwise, they had Baylor in a bowl game. I mean, outside of bowl games, who else have they played from the Big 12 in the regular season? I don't know if they've ever played Kansas State. Don't recall Iowa State on the schedule, Oklahoma State. I don't recall any of those schools.
No, I don't. So I can't remember those. No.
Why not play some of them every once in a while? SEC. What was the last home and home SEC for North Carolina?
South Carolina's the perfect opportunity to do it.
South Carolina was it in like 2008 and 2013,
I think. Yeah, something like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what are the other home and home? In the 80s, they had a home and home with Auburn. They had a home and home with LSU. Trying to think who else they had a home and home with that league. They had Kentucky in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
I think they had Vanderbilt in the 70s. I mean, I think Carolina should play Arkansas. They should play Ole Miss. They should play Mississippi State. They should play Florida. They should play Kentucky. But they had a home and home with Kansas, I think, in the 80s, by the way.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff that they should do. You should never play in-state, although a lot of Carolina fans will tell you that they owe East Carolina a game.
Yeah, they need to play. They just need to beat ECU once. Yeah.
Because ECU just kicked another extra point against the Tar Heels, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they scored at will against them the last 3 times they played, and they've been
unbelievable too. It's wild that. But
other than that, they shouldn't really play in-state teams, and
it's a lose-lose, especially when you're North Carolina. You know,
they need to build something that's more appealing to the fans. That when you bring these teams into your stadium, you fill the place up. You get a better environment. It's better for recruiting. It's better for everything. And also, if you're really good, you need to bolster your resume. And if the ACC is only going to do so much for that, you've got to go outside the league and help do it. So even if Arkansas is not great, if you beat Arkansas by 3 touchdowns and Alabama beats them by 2, you could at least point to that. Say, hey, we should have a seat at the table too. So you have to think in those terms. If that's what your vision is, that's what your mission is, and that is what Mac's mission is. So, what are some of the other non-conference?
Yeah, I want to run through a few real quick before we head on out of here. I mean, just looking at a few moving forward, looking at the 2025 season, TCU is when that home and home series starts with them. I think that's a great one. I think bring TCU in, and I think that's exactly kind of what we're talking about. Play some of these bigger programs. A team coming off a national championship game appearance, who knows if they'll be that good then, but still a program that's consistently pretty good at the most part in football. Same season, though, you got at Charlotte. We talked about that. Not super exciting. Richmond at home, probably could do without that one. And at UCF, I do think the UCF home and home series, Carolina was supposed to play them, first game of the year during the COVID year as well. So I think UCF, another good opponent from the.
They're now Big 12, by the way. They're now Big. That's 2 Big 12 teams.
That's a good point. Yeah. So you got a UCF a program in there as well. Looking at 2026 at TCU, so capping off the home and home series with them. East Tennessee State, not super exciting, but the 2026 season, I think at least non-conference wise, is probably the best. Just looking over the next couple of years, because you get at TCU, UConn at home. I know UConn's probably the worst FBS program, or the worst of the best programs you could play, because
they've had a
train wreck, but they've a little bit of an uptick. Who knows what they'll be like in a few years.
They've improved the coaching there, so they could be decent by then.
And then you got Notre Dame at home. So, Carolina loves playing Notre Dame, as we know. Looking ahead a little bit further.
By the way, let me interrupt real fast. Yeah. UConn could be Big 12 by then too.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hearing rumblings that the Big 12 may offer UConn.
Yeah, and that would be very, very interesting for a football perspective. Basketball, I think it fits, but football would be interesting. 2027, though, I like the 2027 non-conference schedule probably the best, because you got UCF at home, at Purdue. Love that. I think Purdue would be a cool stadium and just a cool atmosphere, a cool football Really a school that's really all about football over there. They have a good basketball program as well, but really good football over there as well. So I think that's interesting. And you go to UConn. So regardless of how they are, you still got to take a trip up there and play them. And then North Alabama, which I know isn't the most exciting, but still, to me, that's probably like the best overall non-conference schedule that Carolina has, in my opinion, over the next few years. And even that one isn't spectacular by any means, with I think when you throw a UConn in there as well. I mean, like I said, they could be improved, but historically, if we look at the last 20 years, they've been arguably the worst program in,
they went up there. They went up there in 2000 and
I remember that.
I think it was.
I remember that.
They won 12-10 on a safety because of a holding call in the end zone.
That's what it was. Yep. Yeah. I remember that. I remember the Rutgers game was at Rutgers. Was that 2009, 2010 maybe?
They had home and home twice with Rutgers.
Yeah, and I like those games.
I went up there and covered a Thursday night. They had a Thursday night, I think, Sturdivant.
Yeah, it was Thursday night. Yeah,
Carter had a pick six.
Yeah, pick six. Yep.
They knocked the crap.
That was a Navy. I think they were all Navy that game.
They were. I'll never forget the buzz in the press box with the Carolina writers that were there about, my God, they're wearing all Navy.
Navy. I remember that was like a huge deal.
Everyone was calling people to tell them, and the Rutgers writers are like, "What is wrong with you people?
It's just a jersey.
You guys don't understand the significance of this," and they didn't understand the significance.
It's the first time ever. Yeah. So I think the TCU is the most appealing non-conference opponent, and at Purdue, and I think that's an appealing one as well. UCF too. So I think they're all appealing opponents coming up, but again, you're still not eliminating those, FCS games.
They did have Indiana home and home. I think Mac's last team hosted Indiana. I think they opened with Indiana. And then they
went to Illinois a few years ago. Well, they had home and home with Illinois.
Excuse me. They had home and home with Illinois, which great, because when you get off the elevator at the press box in Illinois, there's a guy dressed like Red Grange right there to meet you in the Red Grange uniform, which is really fantastic. Cool. That was a big deal. That was a sell. They hadn't sold out much there.
Yeah, that was an exciting game. Yeah.
Trubisky team went in there and sold out. That's when Mitch ran a few guys over, and Larry talked about he's got to get out of bounds. He's got to get out of bounds, and we can't afford to get him hurt. So that was pretty wild stuff. They've had some big but they played those kind of schools. I know there was talk about 8 or 10 years ago. If you remember, for a while, there was a Monday night game at FedEx Field in DC that would have like a non-conference. I think Virginia Tech played BYU there or something, or Penn State or something like that. There was talk about Carolina and Penn State possibly playing in that game, which would have been really cool. I think that would be a great home and home to play, Penn State. Get Michigan State, kind of climb up the ladder a little bit. Iowa, I think if Iowa came into Kenan Stadium, that'd be cool. You want to talk about a physical game. You want to see where the Tar Heels are in the trenches. That'd be a game to find out where they are in the trenches. So I definitely would like to see more variety and more of that. And I think it'll help the program, to be honest with you. I would love to see almost exclusively Power 5 games because I'm that way. But I could understand, some Mountain West, some AAC, some Sun Belt. Sun Belt's a good league. Yeah. So that's fine. But the North Alabama, come on.
Yeah.
Campbell.
I didn't even know they had a football team. That's no disrespect to North Alabama.
ETSU. If we would have seen ETSU last year, we would have seen Elijah Hussey play. But we wouldn't have known.
No.
It's just at the time.
I agree. There are some exciting games coming up, but for me, I just think I always look at football is the opposite of basketball. It's not as many games. It's not as many opportunities. I get why you want to play some of these gimme games, for lack of a better word, especially when you look at where Carolina's been over the last 20 years. I mean, it's understandable. You didn't really want Carolina playing strictly P5 opponents back, in Fedoras last year, for instance. You'd been horrible, been a train wreck as much of it already was. But I think when you look at where the program's trying to go, state admission to Mac Brown, I think if you want to get there, you don't really have a choice, right, AJ? I think you have to play better opponents. I mean, you just do. You can't just play Campbell and, Charlotte every year and in Richmond. It's just it's okay to play one of those games. But I think if you're really trying to get to where Carolina's trying to get, you got to kind of eliminate some of those nothing games, because nobody cares if you win. And if you lose, it's horrible. But if you win, it's like, okay, well, we all could have. It's 4 hours of our Saturday we'll never have back in a lot of ways, because usually they're 50-point wins. It's a nothing game. It just doesn't really bring.
And there weren't as many of those games back in the day. There was one year in the 80s. Go look at Carolina's non-conference schedules in the 80s. Mm-hmm. It's wild stuff, man. The one year they played LSU, Auburn, South Carolina.
Yeah,
Navy,
and that's what I think people want to see. You know what I mean?
Memphis.
When let me ask you this before we wrap it up, and you might not know the answer to this. When did this let's play every program in the country play an FCS opponent or two every year? When did that come into college football?
when coaches started getting fired before 5 years were up. They had to get
so it was more okay.
One of Mac's team, I think it was the '93 team, maybe, when we really started busting out. I think they opened with Cincinnati, and that was considered a cupcake game.
Really, Cincinnati? Wow, it'd be the opposite nowadays. Carolina would be probably not favored in that.
Well, I mean, they waxed them, but and Cincinnati got waxed the next week, I think. But Penn State's an historic type of number, but still, things have changed a lot, and coaches don't get 5 years anymore, so they got to get some wins. So
that's true. Pad the stats a little bit. It's just, again, I don't think beating Campbell is going to save your job at the end of the day if it comes down to that. But yeah, I agree. It'd be interesting to see how it changes. You know, I know a lot of these schedules that you talk about put out really in advance. So as Mac stays and does it, will they add some more maybe tougher opponent? I know they've kind of already done that in some ways with some of the home and homes, but
you know, Larry's last 2 years, they won 5 games. 2 of them were FCS teams, and one was Old Dominion, which was transitioning from FCS. They only had 2 FBS wins.
I know, exactly. So, you know, it's just different. You got to kind of consider where the program's at, but I think where the program's trying to go, it's important to play some of these bigger teams. And not only I think it helps to attract recruits too. I mean, you see some of these games on it. Like, oh yeah, we're going to be playing against
TV,
playing at LSU.
It's about eyeballs, right? That's all about eyeballs. TV, butts in the seats. When every dollar counts, especially when you're in a league that's well behind, every dollar counts.
I still don't. I don't. And we talked about it earlier. And the last thing I'll say, I still don't really understand what appeal playing someone like Campbell has when you just have to pay him to come play. Like, I get you want. I mean, if you're just strictly about supporting a smaller school, then I guess that's great. But like,
and you get a lot of younger guys reps. But how valuable are the reps if it's in the
it's not as valuable.
It's against Campbell's reserves as well.
It's a good point. It's a great point. So, guys, if let us know how you feel about Carolina's non-conference schedule kind of coming up. You can get involved on our Twitter at Hill Illustrated, on our Facebook page at Tar Heel Illustrated, or on our premium message board at tarillustrated.com. You sign up for just $8.33 a month. We post every single content item on there, and you can get involved on the premium message board chat over there as well and kind of let us know. So if you are a member and you are watching this, if you're not, go sign up for $8.33, links below. But if you are, go get involved in that thread as this video is out now. Let us know what you think about Carolina's non-conference. Maybe throw some opponents in there who you'd like to see Carolina play. If you could pick Carolina's schedule over the next few years, throw out maybe some P5 programs or just FBS programs you think Carolina, what you'd like to see a home and home series with. We want to hear what you guys have to say. Another episode of the Daily Drop coming at you. Plenty more of these rolling out throughout the offseason. Make sure you keep it locked to our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. Like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, AJ. I mean, when you're uploading every day, if you want to know exactly when stuff's coming out, hit the notification bell. You get a notification on your phone right to your home screen, every single time we go live, so you can go and watch us as soon as we do. So we appreciate you watching. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another episode of the Daily Drop. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks.